I'm Julie Lyles Carr. This is the Modern Motherhood Podcast from All Mom Does. And on today's episode, I'm going to start with this question. What if all the successful people around you were doing business a certain way and you decided to go the opposite direction? My guest today has built a career of doing just that in film and television. He's Brian Bird, and he's the creative mind behind some of the most beloved shows in entertainment in the last few decades. Brian, thanks so much for being with us.
I'm so thrilled to be with you. It's great to be on your show.
So I know that we have listeners who are going to be so clear on exactly who you are, but just give us an update. Tell us what you do. Tell us where you live, the wife, the kids, all the things.
Well, I'm happy to. So I'm a writer and a producer in film and TV for many, many years, many decades in Hollywood, but now live in Colorado with my wife and 2 of our 5 kids who still live at home. 3 of them are launched. We have 5 kids, and I've made a lot of productions over the years in film and television, but my best productions of all time is my family and those 5 kids and my beautiful wife, Patty. We're coming up on 39 years of marriage. So they're the glue of my life and the reason I do what I do. And the only reason I can do what I do is because of them. And I would be wandering around mumbling to myself without them. So we moved to Colorado about 4 years ago from Southern California. And it's the best thing ever. I love living here.
So I'm going to give you permission to name drop. Just tell us what some of these productions are. I mean, I know I've got this incredible, impressive list in front of me, but I want our listeners to hear because, wow, you have covered some ground, my friend.
Well, yes. I just keep showing up and trying to do good work and sort of let God do the rest and use me and with all my flaws and my humanity to try to do good things in the world. And I think your listeners probably would know me most from the most recent thing I've been doing in the last 7 years or so. It's a little show on the Hallmark Channel called When Calls the Heart. It's based on best-selling fiction by Jeanette Oak, who is sort of the queen of prairie romance, at least in the inspirational space. And my partner is Michael Landon Jr., who you may have heard of as well, or at least know of his father, his very famous father in the TV and film business. And we created this little show called When Calls the Heart about 8 years ago, and we're now prepping for season 7 on the Hallmark Channel, and it has become the top-rated show on the Hallmark Channel, and really one of the top-rated shows on all of cable TV during its season when we're on with new broadcasts. So it's been an amazing revelation to me of how hungry the audience is for hope, faith, and love out there. We're not getting it anywhere else except maybe church.
Right.
And, in our communities, perhaps we get that, but we're not seeing it in the media anywhere. We didn't really anticipate that the show would take off like it has. I mean, you're hoping that something that you put your hands on will do that. But the revelation to us was that there was this vast, starving audience out there. And when you give people food that are hungry, they will love you back.
Right, right.
It's pretty easy math. It's not complicated. And when nobody else is feeding them and you bring soul food to the population, they will return the love. And it's been an amazing experience for us. And so I sort of have to pinch myself all the time about the success of this show because all projects like this are hard to get off the ground. And when there are 1,000 television shows available to us, which is really where we're at now.
Right, with all the different channels and all the different imprints, yeah.
The streaming networks and all the cable networks and so forth. There are 1,000 television shows available to the audience. And breaking through all that noise is really hard to do unless you do something different. And so this show, which is safe for families and for multiple generations to watch together, like back in the old days when I was growing up, we could actually do that on television,
right,
and not feel ambushed. It is absolutely taken off, and the audience has grown immensely for the show. And it's only because we're giving them something that they want and they need, that they're desperate for, but also it's different than everything else. And it's in a weird way, this kind of throwback to Little House on the Prairie sort of show, or Touched by an Angel, another show that I worked on. It is a throwback to shows that we watched when we were growing up, but it's revolutionary in today's day and age because there are no crystal meth dealers or zombies or vampires in Hope Valley. Just good-hearted folks that are trying to help each other. And they're human. They're flawed, they make mistakes, but they love each other, and it's what community is all about. And I just think it's sort of in this day when everything is so toxic and polarized and hopeless, we're providing this sort of oasis of hope to people on Sunday evenings.
Right. I kind of had my first foray into this area of the market. Some of my listeners know I've narrated audiobooks for several years. And it started out, I was doing Christian nonfiction, a lot of Christian nonfiction audiobooks. And then it kind of went into this whole other lane, which was inspirational romance. And I was kind of adrift. I really was not aware how big that part of the market was. And very quickly, I got immersed into understanding how passionate fans were about these books. I did several titles for Denise Austen, some for Rachel Hoke. I did a whole bride series that just went on and on. It was like every month of the year with a bride. And it really was fascinating to take a pause and go, this is really a thing. There is really a community that is very supportive, very much looking for this. How are you able to come to all of the layers that it takes to get something launched in this kind of way? The producers and the investors and directors and all those kinds of things, and convince them that this kind of a hard right, if you will, off of what has become more traditional media, if you will, traditional entertainment. How do you go through that process of proving to them that this could work? Because we know there are a lot of shows that pilots are made and they never see the light of day. They get 86 before they ever come out. So how do you go through that process of proving that there is an audience and that this is a vehicle that people really want?
Well, I think we had the advantage of selling this show to the one lone network out there that is trying to do faith and family kind of content, or at least family-friendly and values-oriented kind of content, and that's the Hallmark Channel. That is their lane, and they have carved out a territory within the business that gives them the distinction of really only doing this kind of programming. Nobody else is doing that. And they are growing 10%, at least double digit in their audience every year, at the same time that most of the other cable networks are falling away and losing audience. And a lot of the big advertiser-supported networks are actually losing audience every year. So they have carved out this lane, and they are doing very well at this business. And so the challenge is that if you don't find the Hallmark Channel, or maybe there are a couple of others, but they're much smaller and they don't really have sort of the resources to do a lot of original programming. So if you don't go there, if you don't sell something there in this category, good luck selling it anywhere else, because I just think the whole industry has collective amnesia about how to do this kind of programming. I don't know that it's a conspiracy to destroy the world or the family. I just think that when all these other channels are trying to outdo each other, the way I think most people think you outdo each other is by becoming more sensational, more edgy, more violent, more R-rated, more like, what some of the other subscriber cable channels can do. And that's a real problem, because if everybody is trying to outdo each other with their sensationalism, then everything gets coarser and edgier, and pretty soon the whole industry just sort of goes over the cliff into dark and disturbed, and that's marketplace forces at work. Yes, it's a heart problem, I think, for some people. They're blind to what is hopeful and what the audience is looking for. We went to the Hallmark Channel, and they said yes. And I have to say, we could never have done this without a network like that, because they believe in this kind of content. They really do. It makes sense. And from a pure business standpoint, when you don't do this kind of programming, I believe you're leaving money on the table.
Great point. Yeah.
All these other networks, they're leaving money on the table. And if they want to do that, okay, fine, we'll do it. Let Mikey eat it. I'll be happy to do this kind of content, because This is the kind of content that I know that I'm supposed to do. This is what my calling in the world is, in life, what I believe I've been given to do is my purpose. And so I want to do life and faith affirming and uplifting kind of entertainment because the world absolutely is hungry for it.
When you go through the process of beginning to develop content for the show, what are some of the things that you're wanting to get across to your audience? What are some of your big ideas? Because when I think about some of the shows in the past that, yes, all the family could gather around and watch, there was generally sort of a gentle moral teaching that took place. There was usually some kind of, as on any hero's journey, some kind of conflict or something that needed to be resolved. So how do you determine where you want to take these characters and what you want to say to the audience as you take them on this journey?
Well, here's the thing. We started off with a great series of books by Jeanette Oke. It's the Canadian West series, and there's 5 books in the series, and so it follows the world and the lives of a lot of these characters. Now, like Little House on the Prairie, that Michael's dad launched to great success all those years ago, it was also based on a series of really beloved books. And at some point, the show outlives the books because there's not enough storytelling in the books themselves to sustain. We're going into season 7 now, and the audience is bigger than ever. So I don't know that it's going to stop anytime soon. At some point it will, but we're just going to keep doing it as long as the audience shows up. And when you outlive the source material, what you do is you have to essentially stay with the core values and the spirit of what the source material is. Jeanette built the world for us, and so we sort of now live within that world, but we then take those values and we have to continue spinning new stories and actually inventing new characters, adding new characters to the world in order to sustain those stories. We're up to close to 80 episodes by the end of season 7. So that's a lot of storytelling that you have to do. So that's one thing. So we had a great, beautiful, brilliant source material, a world that Jeanette had already established in these best-selling books. And that was a good starting point. But I'll call back to your reference of the hero's journey. The hero's journey is the root of all storytelling in humanity. It always has been. All the movies today draw from the hero's journey. It's the monomyth, which is what that is called, is sort of the composite of all the great storytelling, even going back 4,000 years into the caves, when the cave father was telling the little cave son a story at night. He was using the hero's quest in order to do that. All those cave paintings had elements of the hero's quest. And the hero's quest itself has a lot of the same core spiritual values that the Bible does, to be honest with you. Every movie that I see has some kind of resurrection in it. Now, it may not be a literal physical resurrection, but there's a resurrection of somebody's death that takes place in somebody's life. The death of a dream, the death of a loved one, whatever, or death of a hope, the death of an ambition. And all heroes' quests have a resurrection in them. That's part of the stages. It's literally called the resurrection in the hero's journey. It's one of the stages of the hero's journey. And we all have, I believe, these violin strings running through our souls. All humans do, right? It's in our DNA. And those violin strings are tuned to these themes: courage, nobility, hope, faith, love, sacrifice, community, redemption, forgiveness, resurrection. Those strings are tuned to those themes.
Right.
And the human soul is hungry to have those strings plucked. And when they watch a movie or watch a TV show or read a great novel or listen to an audiobook, they're having those strings plucked in their souls. And it doesn't matter where you go. You could be in Mongolia, and they have the same strings. That's why the hero's journey is so universal to the world. 2,000 years before Jesus, Gilgamesh, in the epic poem of Gilgamesh from ancient Sumeria, Gilgamesh dies and is resurrected. Now, C.S. Lewis tells us that Jesus was the myth that became true. That's what he said. Jesus was the true myth. So the human soul has hungered for this kind of storytelling forever.
For always, yeah.
Right? It's written into our DNA. The cosmos is a giant narrative running through space and time, and we're all characters in that narrative. And I personally, a person of faith, I believe that's God's narrative. That's his story, history. It's his narrative. And he's left us this amazing book called the Bible, which is nothing more than a big fat novel of his story, right? So people, moms, dads, children are starving for story. It is the soul food that sustains our inner life. You know, what's the first thing a child asks mom or dad when they're going to bed at night?
Tell me a story.
Why? Why is that? We hunger for story. That's why books, movies, TV, radio, podcasts, all the media that's happening, we're consuming more than ever before. We're gorging on it. And, you know, if we're gorging on junk food, it's not good for our souls.
Right, right.
But if we have some good, solid soul food to nourish our souls, life will be better for us. I promise this. So I think that's the secret to the success of One Calls the Heart and other ventures that we're taking on is really because of that. That's the only math that matters to me right there.
Back with Brian Bird in just a moment. Fall is around the corner. It's time to refocus to make the end of the year strong. And that's why I'm so excited for you to take a look at my newest project from Abingdon Press called Footnotes. It's a 4-week study on 4 characters from the Bible that you might think of as minor, but who actually have major impact. You know, we sometimes feel bogged down in all the little things, the errands, the laundry, the cleaning. It's a powerful reminder that in God's eyes, little things are big things. The little things you do today can resonate next year, the next decade, the next century. Make this a Footnotes fall and take a few weeks to see for yourself how 4 people you may have never even noticed speak into your life today. Footnotes, wherever books are sold, and look for the DVD teaching set at abingdonwomen.com/footnotes. Now, you've had such a tenured career, such a long career. And in this season, there's an extra element that I think is really fascinating. So back when you were on Touched by an Angel, yes, you had tremendous fans. It was on broadcast television at this time, on this night. And so you knew that there was a community out there that was definitely embracing it. If you had a couple of live events or some of the stars show up, you knew who those people were. You could see faces. Today, we have all of these online communities that develop around these story arcs that are so beloved. And I know that you've been very active in Facebook groups for this particular show, which I think is amazing. How does that change, having that immediacy of understanding what's impacting people, what is speaking to them? How does that change things for you as someone who is trying to bring these stories to life?
Well, you're right. The world of social media has been, I think, the salvation of our show. It's the wind beneath the wings of our show. I can't deny that. Because there are so many media programs out there, there's so much original content being made right now. As I said before, it's really hard to launch one, to break through the noise of all the other content that's out there. Social media is the key. You know, there's this group that I'm even drinking out of my Hardee's cup right here.
I love it.
The Hardee's invented themselves. They're completely pure grassroots movement, right? That they weren't built in a marketing lab somewhere. They literally found the show in season 1 and they began to talk to us on social media. And we were just trying to get the show made, and they started to talk back to us on Twitter and Facebook. And, you know, I looked at my partners and said, guys, this has never happened to me before. What are we supposed to do with this?
All this immediate feedback, yeah.
And, you know, I think we were wise enough to take the approach of we have to talk back. And we talked to our cast members and we said, every Hardee deserves an answer of some kind, even if it's a like, right, or a comment or a hello or whatever. Every Hardee out there deserves a response. And so that's what we did. And it was just intuitive to me as a media professional. If you have an audience, you have to engage with them somehow. in the old days, even before email, people would call and leave messages on a voicemail, or they would send letters to the network or whatever. Now it is instant. We live tweet during our show on Sunday night with the Hardys.
Right.
And they trend nationally. #Hardys trends nationally during our show. So we are live tweeting with our audience instantaneous to the show being on the air. That value, additive value to the marketing of the show, I've said this many times, the Hardys are the marketing department.
Right.
They are the ones out there doing what I call evangelism for the show. They are evangelizing their friends. This show is a word-of-mouth show, and when somebody finds good food, they want to tell their neighbor, hey, there's good food over here, come see, come eat. And that has really been the key to this. And I have friends that, work in marketing for media projects, and I showed them what was happening in season 1, and they said, you can't pay for that to happen. That is organic, and they said, if it's a fire that has started, you need to pour fuel on it.
Right.
And so that's what we've done. We've just tried to talk back, and every year we host our own version of Comic-Con up on our set in Vancouver, British Columbia. We allow 400 or 500 Hardys at a time to come and visit and watch the show being filmed. We have cast fan engagements in a big ballroom at a hotel, and it's kind of camp for the people that listen to your show. It's summer camp for them, and our next one's coming in October. So we've just tried to talk back, and I think that has been the key. And it's really the key for anybody trying to launch a platform for their media work. You have to find an audience and build on it, and be, very thoughtful about how you do that.
Right. And that interaction, I think, is so important. We have dear friends who were in music before social media. I have a very dear friend who's a beloved and well-known author who was writing and very successful before social media. And both of these situations have had to make that really extreme turn from going to sort of being gated away, like appreciating fans, but being gated away and trying to preserve a lot of privacy, to making that turn to going, wow, we've got to change the strategy here. We've got to be available. We've got to be interacting. And it's been interesting to watch people who've been in the entertainment industry have to make that turn. And I congratulate you on making it so skillfully and so gracefully, because you do have such a robust community that is so excited about the show. And you bring up something that I think is really important. I think we can spend a lot of time dissing those things that we don't think live up to our standards or our values. But really, I think some of the most valuable things we can do is sharing those things that we do love, that do bring that nutrition, instead of sort of griping so much about what we already know is not exactly great for our hearts and souls, is to really get out there and start talking about what works and what is really powerful. Do you find that to be true?
I do, and I say this all the time too. Not everybody's going to like everything you do, and so you can't have a gush and hush approach. Just either love us or don't say anything. You have to allow people to express themselves, and if they don't like something, we've had a few bumps along the way with our show, or we've had to make some big changes because there's a human factor involved. Somebody wants to leave the show, or, we have other circumstances that sort of can ambush what we're doing. And everybody's not going to be okay with that. But what I've found is that if you just allow a robust conversation to happen, most of the time people can work through their issues. I also really do believe that the 500,000 Hardys who self-identify, it's not like we're calling them. With so many original media concepts being created out there, there's not big bandwidth for big marketing campaigns, billboards on the street corners and radio ads and TV ads and so forth. That's a very expensive process. And so this idea of evangelism to me is revolutionary in media, because if you give people what helps them be hungry, fills their hunger, they will want to share it with other people. We passed out the ringtone, which is part of the theme song of the show, and I hear it when I'm out at the grocery store.
Oh, that's so fun.
It just makes me smile. And people want to be asked about the show. The Hardys want their friends to ask them about the show. And so it creates a conversation. And they have Hardy's parties now all over the country where they get together, and it's not a substitute for church, but it very much is like church for people. They care for one another. They want to communicate the values that they see in the show with each other. They want to have a potluck. They want to take food to the sick, those kinds of acts of kindness that they see on the show. So there's something very powerful about how this has come about. And I do think that for anybody who wants to get their story out there, absolutely the fastest way to do it is to build up an audience of people that love what you're doing and let them start evangelizing for you, because that honestly is the way around the noise. That's the way to break through the noise of everybody else and their projects. So it's been fabulous. I'm grateful. And to me, the greatest legacy of When Calls the Heart, because someday it will end. Hopefully like Gunsmoke 22 years later. I don't know.
2047 episodes later.
Yeah. When the show ends, in my mind, the greatest legacy will not be the show. The greatest legacy will be all those friendships that have been created out there among the Hardys. And I pray that continues, because if you make friends around a TV show, that begins to outlive the TV show. That begins to be more important than the TV show. And if we can create these pockets of community, of people loving on each other all over really the world now, we're seeing, Hardy groups from many countries outside, because the show has traveled now to other countries too. That's huge to me. It's like little house churches everywhere. And I can be greeted at the pearly gates with a well done, good and faithful servant, I hope, if that happens.
I think that's such a beautiful way of looking at whatever we are doing, whatever our creative bent is when we have the ability to create community and gathering where people can have relationship in a world that self-reports as being very, very lonely. I think that's such a powerful thing, that for any of us to really consider those things that we're doing, the work we're doing, where can we create those places where people can connect? What a powerful thing. Now I'm going to ask kind of a very esoteric theological question. We'll see how this goes. Are you ready? Are you caffeinated?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have you learned about God through the development of characters and story for this show? Because to my mind, God is the greatest author, right? He's the one who has created this immense cast of characters with all of the twists and turns of the stories of our lives. What have you learned about him kind of sitting in that kind of a seat, where you have the ability to say, we're going to have a new character show up, or that one's going to have to go off to eternity, or we're going to interrupt this little peaceful looking life and put in a challenge. What have you learned?
I think the big takeaway for me personally from this show, because I was there at the very beginning when it almost didn't happen and when it actually was falling apart before it even got started. In 2008 is when we really started to work on this, and our whole thing melted down, the big financial meltdown. So I've gone through my 40 years in the wilderness with this show, and what I've learned, and this is what I hope we reflect in the show, is that it doesn't matter who I am. It matters who he is. Mm. Our town is full of human beings, and they're flawed and they make mistakes and they're not capable of everything that they need to do. But that's exactly who God has always loved to use to do the best work in the world. And I'm one of them. We're all imposters. We're all cowards in some way or another. And God says, but I'm not. That's okay, because I'm not. And it doesn't matter who you are. It matters who I am. And for me, God will always be faithful. He has seen us through in the most unlikely, mysterious ways, getting to the point that we are on this show. And it has been fraught with peril many, many times. And so the best place for me in what I do is on my knees. That's the best place for me, because I'm not capable, but God is. And I hope that's one of the big theological takeaways that people can gather from watching these people in Hope Valley.
Brian Bird, what a delight to get to talk with you, to hear your heart, to hear the kind of community that is developed and the things that you're seeing. Thank you so much for putting great, nutritious, home-cooked meals out there on the entertainment table for us. And I know that we're going to have all kinds of hearties listening to this. And if you're not a hearty, be sure and check out Brian Bird, all his amazing work, and we'll have lots for you in the show notes. Can't thank you enough for being on today. So appreciate all you're doing. And years and years and years, many Gunsmoke-esque episodes into the future. We hope that you're still making television that delights and teaches and creates community. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Brian is active on his own social media accounts and also with the Hearties, that community we were talking about. You can find all the places to connect in the show notes that our awesome content coordinator, Rebecca Beckett, puts together every week. And be sure and check out the newest spinoff show from When Calls the Heart. It's called When Hope Calls, and it premieres on the Hallmark Channel August 30th. I'm over on the Hearties Facebook group too, so drop me a line there. And I'd also love to connect with you on Instagram at Julie Lyles Carr. Donna Toady is our producer, and she's the best, so a big thanks to her along with Rebecca. Check out allmomdoes.com on the socials and at the website. You'll find great info and inspiration along with a powerful community of women. You do not have to do mom life alone. That's allmomdoes.com. I'll see you next time on the Modern Motherhood Podcast.